this is TapCat, and today I want to talk about whether Let's Plays hurt sales of games. This isn't an especially new topic, but it resurfaced largely because of a blog post that the developer of a game called That Dragon Cancer made. And in it, he talks about whether people watched Let's Plays instead of buying his game. Rather than me paraphrasing, let's actually, quote him directly. So I've just excerpted, I don't want to read his whole thing, but he says, "We underestimated how many people would be satisfied with only watching the game instead of playing it themselves." And he was saying this in response to a Let's Player who had his video claimed. And he says, Mr. Let's Player, I agree. It does suck to have someone else making revenue off of your work. So obviously he's a little salty that anyone would have the temerity to post a Let's Play of his work. Now, that's not the totality of his comments, so I don't want to, suggest that it is. I'm excerpting points, that I want to discuss directly, but I'll have a link to his full blog post in the description. So the last comment on this page, he does add, "We feel the Let's Play culture adds value to this medium, and for games with more expansive or replayable gameplay, it can directly benefit developers." So this part is long, but let's just go through it and then I'll respond. He says, "However, there is a flip side for the developers whose content you build your work on top of. Despite infringing on developers' copyrights, it can especially benefit those who make competitive or sandbox games. However, for a short, relatively linear experience like ours, for millions of viewers, Let's Play recordings of our content satisfy their interest, and they never go on to interact with the game in the personal way that we had intended for it to be experienced. If you compare the millions of views of the entirety of our game on YouTube to our sales as estimated on Steam Spy, you can hopefully see the disparity. We have seen many people post our entire game on YouTube with little or no commentary. We've seen people decompile our game and post our soundtrack on YouTube. We've also seen many Let's Players post entire playthroughs of our game, posting links to all their own social channels and all their own merchandising, and leaving out a link to our site." Okay, so that's a lot to cover. First, let me just fill in one blank. When he talks about the disparity between millions of views, the estimated sales on Steam Spy is about 17,000. So yes, that is a very big difference if you just look at the number of people who watched versus the number who bought. Whether you can attribute all of that to the mere existence of the Let's Plays, I think that's a very different question. Now, before I go any further on my thoughts today, I do want to play for you a clip from part 10 of a series that I did on Walking Dead Season 2 by Telltale Games. This was at the very end of that installment. And that concludes episode 2. I have to say, I don't think I'm going to record episode 3 forward. I don't like cutting off a series before it's complete. But the more I play this game, the less I feel like it's an appropriate one for a Let's Play. The actual gameplay portions are very short. Most of the time, it's more like I'm watching a movie. And without stepping on the story, my opportunities to provide commentary are very limited. So I don't really feel like I'm adding anything to this. I feel less like I'm doing a Let's Play series and more like I'm, like plagiarizing somebody's movie or something. And I'm not really comfortable with that. So I know there's a million channels that are showing this anyway. And so it isn't like this is the only source of this material on YouTube. But at any rate, I think this is going to do it for me. So I apologize if that's disappointing, but we're going to try to find something else where maybe we can add a little bit more to it. I recorded that 2 years ago, and you can see that in some ways I kind of agreed with them, right? I feel like recording a series where I say basically nothing, it treads perilously close to copyright infringement. And whatever the law would say, it just did not feel right to me. As I said, I felt more like I was plagiarizing a movie. Now, I believe in his statement here, he goes way too far. When he says he's not talking about just this type of Let's Play, he's referring to all. And he says, despite infringing on developers' copyrights, it can especially benefit those who make competitive or sandbox games. Well, I just don't believe that's true. I think it's one thing if you want to say that showing a game in its entirety and saying nothing, and essentially when it's especially just a story, and now you've shown that, you may very well be engaging in copyright infringement. If you're talking about a game like Civilization 5 or XCOM, you know, the ones that are kind of staples of my channel, then you're bringing not just your personality to it, but your strategic approach and decision making and all of that. And I would argue it's very much transformative and within the boundaries of fair use. That I'll give you an example. So you watch a Civilization 5 video on my channel. Take whatever one you want. Now, go to Yogscast, where they have done a number of Civilization 5 videos. You tell me if you saw the same thing. Okay, it's all the same. We didn't add anything. We just showed you the game. Now you don't need to play it anymore, right? No, that's not how it works. It's totally different. Tapcat, that's Yogscast. Come on, that's not a fair comparison. Well, it kind of is because we're both Let's Players, but that's all right. I'll set them aside. Let's take another strategy channel. Go watch The Solar Gamer, because I remember a long time ago, I did a Brazil Let's Play, and then he did one later. And his entire approach and how he played that game and how it played out for him was so different than mine. And you watch just the first several installments of each series, you come back and tell me they're the same. I'm telling you right now, I will just tell you straight up, you are lying to me. Because it's not true. The individual brings so much to these. And the other thing is, these developers and publishers, if they genuinely believed, and they have lawyers, by the way, and if they believed that we were infringing on their copyrights or damaging them, they would be taken down. And the thing is, it isn't just strategic games that benefit from this. Intuitively, you would kind of think it would work that way. I would kind of think it works that way. But if you look up the numbers for other story-driven games, okay, now the sales for that Dragon Cancer, they sucked, right? Like 17,000 copies, that's not a lot. But Walking Dead sold almost 2 million copies. The estimate is 1.8 million on Steam alone. We're not counting all the frickin' console copies and that stuff. Stanley Parable, 1.7 million. Firewatch is a relatively new game, and it's almost at 250,000. Gone Home, over 400,000. Do you think there weren't Let's Plays of this? Now, I don't know how many copies Gone Home would have sold if Let's Plays didn't exist. That's a fair point. It also goes both ways, though, because a lot of people would probably have never known that Gone Home existed, that Firewatch existed and games like that if not for the exposure that YouTubers and Let's Players gave them. The one thing that can't be argued, though, is these games got extensive YouTube coverage and they sold like crazy. And you know why? Because people wanted to play them. It's that simple. Either they didn't watch a Let's Play. Okay, the people who watch Let's Plays, we don't know how much overlap there is. If you watch it, did you watch that to see if you wanted to play and then you didn't like what you saw? You were willing to keep watching, but that was it? Or the ones who were genuinely interested only watched the first chapter or something and then they just went and bought it, whatever game we're talking about. I've done that. I remember I saw the first chapter of a Until Dawn Let's Play, and that was a big part of what pushed me to go buy a PS4, that and Bloodborne, because I just thought, oh my God, this looks great. I need to play that. So I think you have to be very careful assuming that everyone who ever watched a Let's Play would have bought our game. Yeah, no, you don't get it, man. People didn't buy your game because it's not something they want to do. Like it's as simple as that. You made this super depressing, weird looking, like all of the faces are just polygons. Nobody has features, no eyes, no mouths, nothing like that. I guess there's obviously some audience for it. 17,000 people built it. But I just don't know that a super depressing game where there's no decisions to be made, you can't avoid the inevitable death of your child in the game, is something that's going to appeal to a lot of people. It may be this very personal project for you and this story that you want to share, but that doesn't mean that, some of us want to have it shared with us. Like, I don't want to pay money to experience that. Like, I've experienced grief in my own life, thank you, and I don't really need to wallow in yours for a while. And I'm sorry if that sounds callous. I feel bad about what happened to, their son. That is a pain that I cannot even imagine. But I don't really want to go too deep in trying to, if you know what I'm saying. It's just not something I care to do. I don't really watch depressing movies either. I play games for one of two things: to make me think, the way XCOM does, or like Borderlands 2. Every now and then I'll play a game like that that's just dumb as hell, but it's fun, It's funny and it's just a good time. But super heavy, emotionally draining walking simulators, they're not really on my list, and I'm not sure how many other people there are either. So I understand it's a lot easier to just point the finger at people who make videos on YouTube, but I'm not sure I personally agree with that. One more point I want to make. He does say something here at the end of this paragraph that they've seen many Let's Players post their playthroughs. They have links to their social channels, links to their merchandising, but no link to the developer. And at one point, he even goes so far as to suggest that, hey, if you watched a Let's Play and you would come and donate just $1 or $2 to us, that would make a huge difference for us. I think that's a really interesting point, and it's one, at least I can't remember ever having heard anybody make before. It's certainly not one I've ever thought of. In all of the games or Let's Plays I've posted, I've never put a link to a publisher website. And I guess I've always kind of assumed that if I put up a series of, say, XCOM 2, that you as a viewer are intelligent enough to find where you could buy that, because it's certainly not my intent to keep the game for myself. I never thought about donations either. I think that very clearly would only be something people would do for indie developers. I actually think a more interesting idea, I think personally, one of the shortcomings that I think YouTube has is that when you monetize a video that you've uploaded, either you get 100% of the money, or someone puts in a claim on for copyright and they get 100% of the money. So if I used 10 seconds of a song in an hour-long XCOM 2 episode, and somebody owned the rights to that song and claimed it, they would then get every penny that video generated. That does not seem entirely fair to me. Likewise, though, I think that even though the work we do playing a strategic game is transformative, I don't have a problem with the idea that, hey, what if you gave some kind of royalty? What if there was a percentage established that went to the people who created the original work? I don't know. I'm just throwing that thought out there because I thought it was an intriguing notion. I think this guy, I don't quite know what to make of him. In some places, I feel like he's kind of talking out of both sides of his mouth, because on the one hand, he says, oh yeah, Let's Players are a great part of the community, blah, blah. And then he also makes it clear that you're kind of a parasite, you're infringing on their copyright, no matter what you do. And that it sucks to see YouTubers making money off of other people's work. So I'm not sure he's really being sincere when he says there's anything good about it. But his opinions aside, anyway, I think he makes some interesting points, and I guess we'll see how this plays out as we go forward. We're not going to settle anything here today. So the only other point I want to mention really quickly is that starting next week, when I upload this series on Mondays, that is the only video that will go live. And my own Let's Plays, I'm going to cut down to 6 days a week. So Monday will just be for this. And at some point in the future, I may add other types of content as well, and we'll see. I only want to do so many videos a week. It's a bit of a thing, if you know what I'm saying, even though I'm just a parasite who is living off of other people's work, apparently. All right, enough salt on my part. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. I hope we see you next time.